Hello, I'm attorney Scott Lesowitz, and I would like to congratulate Brett Favre and his legal team by suing Pat McAfee, Shannon Sharpe, and a Mississippi state official for defamation. Brett Favre has successfully ended all negative press that implies he committed welfare fraud. Ha ha ha, I'm just kidding. You probably couldn't tell I was kidding because of how good my acting is. I will be reacting to John Oliver's recent segment in which he makes Brett Favre the poster boy for, let's say, poor use of welfare funds in regards to TANF. Now, along the way, I will get a bit into defamation law and Brett Favre's current defamation lawsuits, especially the one against Pat McAfee, because what John Oliver said about Brett Favre is quite similar to what Pat McAfee said. Now, before getting into the clips, I want to take this opportunity to make fun of Brett Favre and his legal team. I am immature. Before Brett Favre filed his defamation lawsuits, his alleged role in the alleged welfare scheme was largely out of the news cycle. It had been a few months or so since there had been major attention on it. And then Brett Favre goes and files his defamation lawsuits, and Pat McAfee responds by hilariously mocking Brett Favre on his YouTube program.
Have until Wednesday to issue a public apology to Brett Favre and also to erase all of the video in your catalog. I was planning on doing it.
Yeah.
We played pickleball.
True. We did.
And now John Oliver, who is a very different media figure appealing to a very different audience than Pat McAfee, has said basically the same things about Favre that Pat McAfee did, spreading the message in popular media even further. All right, so let's take a look at the first clip. Let's try to keep in mind what John Oliver asserts about Favre as we're watching.
That's right. Brett Favre was involved in getting $5 million in TANF funds funneled into building this volleyball stadium. And I'm a little surprised you even need a stadium to play volleyball in. I thought it was a sport mainly played outdoors by sexually frustrated men who aren't wearing shirts and sporty dogs who unexpectedly are alleged to have helped get around $2 million of TANF dollars routed to a pharmaceutical company that he invested in, and personally received over $1 million more for the promise that he'd make public appearances or record PSA.
So one thing this reminds me of is that one of Brett Favre's attorneys said during an interview something to the effect that, well, even though Brett Favre's daughter attended the university where a stadium was built, she would not have got to enjoy the stadium because she played beach volleyball, not indoor volleyball. That gives me a sense of what we're dealing with Favre's attorneys. All right, so on to the next clip.
And in his text messages to a central figure in the scheme, a woman named Nancy New, Favre seemed eager to keep the details of this deal private.
Texts show Favre was worried about how it might look. He wrote, "If you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much?" New replied no, but added, "I understand you being uneasy about that."
Yeah, me too. But Brett, I have some terrible news for you. The media did find out. That's what's happening now.
So here John Oliver points to text messages that Favre sent as evidence that Favre had bad intentions. One thing that is very noticeable to me is that when Oliver's playing the news segment where the newscaster reads part of the text messages, the audience laughed. All right, one last clip from the John Oliver segment.
Favre and DiBiase maintain they did nothing wrong and have not been criminally charged. And Favre wants us to tell you that he returned the $1.1 million that he was personally paid and says that he didn't know any of the money was coming from welfare funds, although it's not clear exactly where exactly he did think the money was coming from. Perhaps he thinks there's some pot of taxpayer money that he can just dip his sausage fingers into whenever he needs something. I don't know. He's been hit in the head a lot. Not enough, but a lot. But what is not in dispute here is that for years there were people in Mississippi in dire need of help who just couldn't get it.
Okay, so John Oliver here points out that Brett Favre has not been criminally charged and that Brett Favre maintains he did nothing wrong. John Oliver also says that Brett Favre wants him to tell the viewers that Brett Favre had returned the $1.1 million that went to him personally, and also that Favre claims he didn't know that the source of any of the funds were from funds intended to be for welfare. John Oliver then pokes fun at the idea that Favre did not know what the source of the funds was. So John Oliver then pivots to a broader discussion on misguided uses of welfare funds, probably be more exact. And he's clear that it's not, Brett Favre's fault about the greater problem. However, he does use Brett Favre as the poster child for the segment. And, congratulations to Team Favre for their PR management. So since we know that Brett Favre likes to file defamation lawsuits, can he sue John Oliver for defamation? Well, if he wants to actually win, the answer is no, of course not. John Oliver, just like Pat McAfee, Shannon Sharpe, and the Mississippi official, had quite a bit of First Amendment protection. He was speaking about a public figure, a matter of public interest, and therefore not only would Brett Favre have to prove that what John Oliver said was false, but that John Oliver knew it was false or was in reckless disregard of the truth. That is quite a high standard. Mere negligence is not enough. Also, to the degree that John Oliver was telling the viewers what other people are saying about Brett Favre, that's not defamation. And to the degree that John Oliver's merely stating opinions as opposed to facts, that's not defamation either. Now, I'm going to play for you part of Pat McAfee's segment about Brett Favre. I think you'll see that in certain ways, it's milder than what John Oliver said. Pat McAfee is more direct about how the allegations he's speaking about do not involve Favre taking money and keeping money for himself personally. Also, he doesn't talk about the $2 million that allegedly went to the pharmaceutical company that Brett Favre allegedly invested in. McAfee gives a disclaimer in a way that he doesn't know so much about the facts of the case, that he's largely going off just what he heard in the media and what the other people are telling him on his program. One thing that Pat McAfee did that John Oliver did not was to characterize what Favre did as stealing from the people of Mississippi. However, I don't think that's that big of a deal because it's clear from the segment that Pat McAfee is saying that as an opinion based off of what was already disclosed to the viewers in the segment.
Yeah,
it wasn't for him though, right? It was for donations.
No, yeah,
it
was for Southern Miss's new volleyball facility.
Taking money out of probably the portion of the world that needs it the most.
Who's a rich Robin Hood.
Poor cities and poor states.
States welfare fund. You can't.
There's no way they put him in jail for this.
No, definitely not. I saw him and the governor. I don't think are facing anything like that, but